Hey everybody, thanks for joining us on our Counterculture podcast this week. We're talking about the gospel and abortion. So we're going to start off our time just reading a few scriptures. I'm going to start off in Psalm 127 verse 3.
It says, "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward." Man, that's good.
Matthew 10 says, verse 29, "Are not two sparrows sold for a penny? And not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father, but even the hairs of your head are all numbered."
Psalm 139, verses 13 through 16. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them.
Mm-hmm. So, in this particular episode, David Platt, in this chapter of the book, talks about a number of really great things. He uses a lot of really great quotes from various people. So we thought that this week we would kind of examine from the perspective of those quotes, just kind of use those quotes as a jumping off point to talk about various things dealing with this particular subject. But as always, if you have any questions or if there's anything you feel like we didn't say, we'd love to hear from you. You can just send an email to any one of us. Our emails are on our website. We would love to talk to you more about this issue or anything else that you hear, and most importantly, about the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, John, do you have any quotes that kind of jumped out to you?
Well, I mean, the first thing, the title is obviously pretty intense. You know, right from the beginning, we think of the Holocaust, and we know that 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust, and the comparison is made right to in the chapter title, the modern day Holocaust of abortion, and and some people would say, it's not a good thing to do right now in the culture to reference the Holocaust. Apparently, you might lose your job, but I don't know about that context. But in this context, it's appropriate.
Absolutely.
And I would agree with that 42 million unborn babies every year, their life is ended, in the womb.
And that's 115,000 abortions every day. Mm-hmm. Every day. And that's worldwide. That's not just in America. Mm-hmm. But that is unreal. That means in 5 days, more babies are killed than the people who have died in the United States from coronavirus over the past year. Mm-hmm. 5 days.
So sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's 115,000 mothers a day who, at the prospect of having a child, don't see hope or a blessing in it.
Yeah. They see hopelessness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like we live in a world where 115,000 mothers a day think,
yeah,
"Oh no, I'm pregnant," rather than, "What a blessing."
Yeah, and to stifle that number a little bit with the reality that there are countries who require abortions, and some moms go in reluctantly.
Yes,
sure. China has a one-child policy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you're right. Many do, but there are some that I guess that's not that's obviously not the case. Thinking about though in America, 1/3 of women on average, it says, have experienced an abortion at some point in their life. That's a still a large number. 1 in 3, and that's he calls it the silent killer. Abortion being it has been called the silent killer not only of babies but of moms who possess deep wounds and dark scars from past history. And that. And so I think the tendency though is to either be passionate about one or the other, the life of the mom or the life of the baby. Yeah. And, as Christians, we want to be passionate about both.
Not a whole lot of nuance there. And a lot of times when we put everything into these camps of pro-life versus pro-choice, anytime there's any nuance of, you could say, yeah, abortion is wholeheartedly wrong, never okay in any circumstance. We also need to make sure that mothers are well taken care of. That the first opportunity somebody's going to go, oh, well then if you care about the mother, then it has to be at the expense of the child, right? So you're pro-choice. Or vice versa, like you say, well, maybe there are things that we can do to, I don't know, make women not get to the point where they're so hopeless that they feel like they have to have an abortion. And then they go, okay, so you're pro-abortion then? Like there's so much nuance that I think we lose in our...
Being pro-life is not just about being against abortion. It is about being against abortion, but there's more to it about caring for people.
Yes, yeah. He says not minimizing the severity of abortion before God. I mean, it is sinful. It is. I mean, this is not the way it's supposed to be. That's what I think a good definition for sin is. But it's also magnifying the reality of God's grace. And we need to be intentional as Christians to always do that when we talk about all the things we're going to talk about in this book, right? Always need to be shared in light of the grace of God, and the hope we have in Christ. Amidst all the difficult things in the world, difficult issues in the world, injustice, whatever they may be, there is a God who is just, and He is also gracious and good and kind, right?
Forgiving.
Absolutely, forgiving. That's right. So we do need to be. I think all the more like I think it's important as a pastor, someone who's preaching and walking through. We walk through. We walked through a situation where babies were being thrown in the Nile, and we talked about the value of life. We talked about that. We walked through the Exodus, or the book of Exodus. And at the beginning, obviously Pharaoh was commissioning these midwives to throw babies in the Nile, and talked about the significance, the value of life.
But similarly in the Gospels when we were preaching through, was it Luke when we were reading about Herod's killing of babies when he's searching for Jesus. Sort of about Jesus being one.
I don't know if you experienced this, John. I don't know if you've experienced this, Josh, but before preaching or teaching on this, it's very easy in my own heart to be like fire and brimstone against abortion, so much so that you forget that we're surrounded by people who have either had an abortion or counselled someone to have an abortion or supported someone, or maybe it's a friend who's pushed a girlfriend or a wife to have an abortion. And it struck me once, we were preaching I was preaching the Family Life Centre. It was a Sunday evening service a couple of years ago. I think we were doing a Sav-A-Life thing. I was speaking on abortion, and it just struck me that I was looking out on people that I loved and cared deeply, who might have been going through this, had an abortion, struggled with it, and it definitely brought more of that pushing the love and the grace and the forgiveness of God.
Yeah.
These aren't just people. These just aren't other people. These are people in our families. These are people in our church family, and that's why it's important to highlight the love and forgiveness of God.
Yeah, because to highlight justice or mercy in a vacuum does a disservice to both. And the reality is that the grace of God can only be fully displayed when the justice of God is spoken about.
Yeah. As far as kind of abortion being, we'll talk about it. Kind of walk you through as the book does a little bit here. But abortion, I think about it as the undoing of what you read, Alex. The undoing of Psalm 139. God is at work knitting a child together, and it is it is basically the undoing of the work of God in knitting a child together, and taking life. Obviously, God is, Scripture's clear. God is the giver of life. Deuteronomy 32:39. I put to death and I bring life. That's God's work, and so. When we think about the taking of life, that ought to be alarming to us. It ought to immediately be unsettling because we are people who value life, and we don't think that people should determine life and death for any other people, in that sense.
We can't, it goes back to the fundamental, the first lie in the garden of, did God really tell you this? Putting Eve in the position of saying, well, is this right? She puts herself in God's position to decide what is in fact right and what is in fact wrong. This is just another way in which humanity looks at something that is the sole responsibility of God, the giving and taking of life, and we take that upon ourselves. And we put ourselves in that position. We give ourselves that authority. And that anytime humanity puts themselves in the position that God alone can occupy, bad things are sure to follow.
Yeah. He goes in and talks a little about typical on average when abortions are done being 12 to 14 weeks, I think, and he says, that in that's 12 weeks. You have pretty much a lot of the
inward parts
of a child. Yeah, a lot of the knitting together that God is doing, in the womb, and has already been accomplished at that point. And he, so we won't deal with all of that. I'm sure you can get a textbook to tell you that. But I thought one of the most interesting things that was in this chapter was what he said about, a royal baby, and I loved what you said about that. After we were talking about it a while ago, Princess Kate, she's expecting, and no one in the media would ever, waver on the thought of that not being a baby in her womb.
And if she had an abortion, there would have been a riot because she aborted a king.
Yes. Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Right.
And there'd be outrage because we ascribe, what Josh was saying is we ascribe value to that child more than someone else. Yeah. That's wrong.
And realizing that if we extrapolate that to its furthest end, the reality is that as children of God, we have royal kinship. And so everyone, as being made in the image of God, is of a royal value in the image of God.
That's right. I think also with abortion, it is a symptom of a deeper problem in our society. We've seen over the last, 60 to 70 years a disintegration of the family. More and more people are not getting married. More and more people are just cohabiting together, living together. I've got some stats here that in 2018, unmarried women accounted for 85% of all abortions. So it's unmarried women. So if we have a society where people are not getting married, making that commitment to one another, when someone gets pregnant, they've not got that husband there to care for them, to maybe work while they're pregnant, those type of things, care for them, have a house for them. So we're seeing that when we go outside of God's design for where sex should take place, which is in marriage, one of the results is going to be a society where there's high rates of abortion. Because we broke something that was good.
Yeah. Misused a gift.
That's right. That's right. It's like a fireplace, right? I can have a fireplace in my house, and a fire can be in the fireplace, and it's great. I can warm up to it. It looks beautiful. I could, if I wanted to, heat water on it, cook on it. I could do all these amazing things. When the fire is in the fireplace, it's the place it's supposed to be. I can take the fire out of the fireplace and put my couch on fire, and suddenly it's a panic. I can burn my house down very quickly. It's the same fire. It's doing the same thing. It's just in the place it's not supposed to be in.
Diesel is great fuel in the correct car.
That's right.
It's just not great for the Jetta.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think giving that illustration some legs a little bit, like what is the fire that's out of control? I mean, I think that would be the question. I mean, it really goes back to what is in the womb. The crux of the problem here of why people disagree on whether or not there's a baby in the womb.
And that's, he goes back to, was it Gregory Koukl. I don't know how to pronounce that name, but it's Koukl.
Yeah.
It says, if the unborn is not a human person, no justification for abortion is necessary. If it's not a person,
Right.
who cares?
Yeah.
What's the big deal?
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, if the unborn is a human person, then no justification for abortion is adequate.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you go back to, even if you try to secularize it, even if you try to secularize it and say, well, okay, it is a person. We believe it's a person.
Yeah.
Use secular documents to define what a person's rights are. We believe that, go back to the Declaration of Independence. All men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. As such, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we were willing to go to war with a country to defend that from someone, So even in a secular environment, we know the value of life.
Sure. Yeah.
And we would say, in no circumstance is it appropriate to remove that life.
Yeah.
That's right. It's interesting, in our society today, you'll have almost a acceptance in some quarters of abortion for children with learning difficulties or disabilities. In the book it talks about how 92% of all children with Down syndrome in America have been aborted. And yet there would be an outcry for countries like China and India because they do gender selective abortions where, and because they're only allowed one child in China, it's better for them to have a boy in their society. So if they have a girl, they abort. And the same people who would say, that's terrible, you can't abort a child because it's a girl, are perfectly supportive of there to be an abortion for a child with Down syndrome.
Like in
Or
Iceland.
a girl, for that matter.
Yeah.
That's inconvenient.
Yeah,
I mean,
In Iceland, they say
that's right.
in Iceland they've said that they've eradicated Down syndrome. That's not the case. It would be amazing, It would
Yes.
it was arguably scientifically, if they said, okay, we have isolated a gene that causes very rare conditions, whether it's Down syndrome or something else, and we know how to rewrite that gene. That would be one thing. Again, I think I would argue you would lose some of the brilliant things that come around with having people who have Down syndrome. With the difficulties, there are tremendous blessings that come through that. But really what's happened in Iceland is they have perfect detection of Down syndrome in the womb, and they abort every child with Down syndrome. They haven't cured Down syndrome, they've killed everyone with it.
Yeah.
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 That's right. I think it's also important to look at our society and call out men. Like, this is not just a women's issue. When you look at a society where men are growing up later and later in life, they're not there to be husbands because they're still at home playing the Xbox. They don't have a job. Right? Like, our grandfathers and even our parents, my granddad got married 18 or something, and he was working a full-time job.
Yeah.
And he was able to care for his wife and provide for a family.
Yeah.
And as men and our young men in society, they should be stepping up to the plate to be there to care for women and to be able to make a commitment of marriage and be the men that God's called them to be.
They want all of the pseudo men, the prolonged adolescents in our society, want all of the benefits of sex with none of the responsibilities.
That's right.
And that's
right.
It's not just with sex, that's with life in general. They want all the benefits and none of the responsibilities. But don't you think that if it would eliminate so many of the worries and anxieties that come along with bearing a child if you know that you have a co-parent to deal with?
From the CDC in 2018, among married women, only 4% of pregnancies ended in abortion. But with unmarried women, it was 27%.
Yeah.
So it just shows you, marriage there is a huge deterrent to abortion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a family problem.
It's a family.
It's a men and it speaks to lack of owning responsibility. It does. There are. I think we could probably. We think about this word here. The biblical view of God's relationship with the unborn is more and more at odds with what our culture believes to be true, and that's what really we're talking about. There is culture is telling some men that they can be boys and not own responsibility and step up and like we said, the age of marriage has moved way back. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a bad thing. I mean, it's not good for society. It's not good for creating an amount of single mothers trying to make difficult decisions. I mean, it's not a good thing.
And our hearts would be broken for those single moms.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
When I got married at 23, Josh, you got married at 23?
That's a great question.
Okay,
I don't even know how old I am now.
I think Chris got
25 for me.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm 25. I think Chris got married about 23. I think Will and Kate got married about 23. And that in today's culture is considered early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very.
But for my grandparents, that was considered late.
You were, like a year away from sinful.
Right.
Waiting to 25. Good night.
Yeah. I think I was 25.
So it just shows you that in the church.
I don't know
how old I am. I could tell you my anniversary and
yeah, 06 when I got married. I don't know.
Yeah, December 21st, 2017. I know that. So, honey, I love you, and I know our anniversary. I just don't know how old I was.
But it just shows you in the church when our young couples are getting married in their non-church circles, they're going, that's a bit young to get married. It's a good testimony, making a commitment to someone.
Yeah. We got to still believe that when our daughters get, 18, 19, 20 years old. It's going to be hard to believe that. So get it together, all you 5-year-olds, 8-year-olds.
You've got 10 years to find a man. Go.
That's right.
You've got to raise Isaac and Josiah well.
Yeah, I was the other thing I thought of here in this section was we did talk a little bit about special needs maybe and I think you talked about this Down syndrome picture, the stat there, you shared that I think, but you also have like incest and rape. Typically those two are kind of highlighted in our culture as kind of being unique, and for Christians really who take the Bible seriously, those we affirm it is it's best to not take life. I mean those are horrible things, particularly rape.
He says here, how after all should we treat an innocent child who reminds us of a terrible experience? The answer is clear: with love and mercy, as we have been treated. How easy would it have been for God the Father to say, these people murdered my son?
Yeah, that's right.
Done with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How much more so for someone who is innocent? And we have been treated with love and mercy, though we are guilty.
And incest and rape are always the two things that come up as a pushback towards more anti-abortion legislation. I've got the state of Florida records every reason for every abortion. So to have an abortion, you have to say why. Incest was 0.01% and rape was 0.14%. So together that's 0.15%, which means 99.85% of abortions were not for incest or rape.
So, not to take issue with the statistic in and of itself, but I would say that there's significant potential for that to be skewed.
Because people don't want to say.
People don't want to say I was raped, or I was in
I hear you.
That's
sure.
That's a difficult.
Yeah. Right.
I'm not saying that they're way off. They're probably not way off.
But there's some people who don't want to cause the.
If it's being recorded and the government's going to know something specific about your life, how many people in the South do you know are going to tell the government the truth?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just being honest.
No doubt.
I hear you.
But at the same time, I mean, regardless of the reason you talk about,
it's minimal compared to the other reasons why.
Yeah.
A lot of times, those like you said though are at the forefront. When you talk about. Have people giving pushback to that. I thought it was interesting when he said if the rapist were caught, would we encourage this woman to murder him in order to get emotional relief? Surely not. Then why would we encourage her to murder an innocent child in the name of emotional relief?
So he
thoughts?
said that, and I think in our flesh, a lot of people would have answered yes to that first question.
Yeah.
Like, just imagine if you will,
Yeah.
like someone you knew and were close to was raped, and you caught the rapist.
Right.
Like, say someone in your family.
Say someone raped someone and you caught them, would that be a part of you? It's like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna kill this guy.
Right. Sure.
And the unfortunate reality is that they're probably going to get 6 months to a year in jail, and that's about it.
Depending on how wealthy they are, I'm guessing, and a number of other factors.
If they have drugs in their system.
But, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but
True.
the sentiment is correct. You know,
Mhm.
we would not encourage the murder of an innocent for the sake of emotional relief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Or the guilty, for that matter.
Yeah.
So the last part of this book is he's going to go talk about the significance of this in terms of government and so forth, and then he's going to finish with a strong word on redemption and forgiveness and God's grace and so forth, and then does give kind of at the very end of the chapter some thoughts about how to apply Scripture in light of this reality, and what does that look like? For me, when I read this, and I'm with him on a lot of his thoughts here when it comes to government restraining evil, having a responsibility to help restrain evil. Government is never a solution to the problem of evil. Never will be. We'll never legislate, perfect morality in society
Or salvation.
Redemption, none of that. But it is part of the responsibility of government. It is a means of caring for the weak, the poor, and the marginalized, the oppressed, vulnerable. And so it is, I think it makes sense to me to say that we, when someone says, don't, it's not the government's job to legislate morality. I've heard that a lot on different issues. But that's really, almost a ton of our laws are having to do with moral issues. Mm-hmm. And so to act like there's not any responsibility within government to restrain evil and to curb evil is wrong-headed, because we are glad when we think about laws about do not steal. Burglary is wrong. I'm going to go in the bank and it's going to be wrong if someone takes a gun in and tries to rob me.
The fundamental value of human life is found in the reality that every human life is made in the image of God. Mm-hmm. And any assault on that human life, whether via burglary or rape or murder of an adult or of a child in the womb, is a violation of the fact that life is given and taken away by God alone.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And when any of our laws that are designed to protect mankind are based in that truth, which is that life has value, and that life has value is found in the reality we are made in the image of God. So at what point what do we as the church do? Mm-hmm. Because it's easy to read all of this, and it's easy to talk about all of this. Mm-hmm. But I got to tell you, and I told you earlier, when I was reading this chapter, I felt helpless almost, because it gives you all of these things, and you want to have a nuanced conversation, and you want to learn, and you want to be loving to mothers in distress, and fathers who don't know what to do, and children who just need to be born.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you want to be kind and merciful, and display the love of a loving God to these people. But how do we do that practically as the church?
Well, I'll give you one real practical example, but before I do that, in light of what Scripture says, it's unthinkable to be silent or neutral. We cannot do that. Lives are being lost children in the womb matter to us as Christians, because we know that life begins in the womb, and it's clear. We see babies leaping in the womb in Scripture. We read, a clear picture of how God is at work and orchestrating the organs and so forth together to make a baby in the womb, and to say, and even if someone says, well, I don't know if it's conception or whatever, it's in the womb, and let's err on the side of caution when it comes to life and death. We do it all the time. We don't knock a building down that we're going to eradicate with the potential of people being in there, right?
We're 95% sure that they're not alive.
Right. I think we went to most of the floors to tell everybody right to knock the building down, but
maybe missed a couple of them.
Right. We don't do that. The picture here is, how do we practically now, in light of that reality, how do we show grace and compassion in the midst of this conversation? Well, I think one of the ways we do that is by reaching out to and partnering with people like Sav-A-Life. In our community, thankfully, we're going to have someone from Sav-A-Life talk a little bit at the close of this conversation. We support Sav-A-Life. We recently, our women did a ministry for having a baby shower for an expectant mom, and just to try to be a blessing to them, and there's that's just one way that we can partner with that organization, which is about trying to save lives, the unborn, and so, practically speaking, that's one way. I think one way is by loving people through those difficult things, and showing grace to people in the church. I think the world ought to look in and go, hey, the church really loved that person. Yes, they believed that was sin that maybe happened on the front end of that, not being in the context of marriage, maybe that intimacy that created this child, but it's a child. Mm-hmm. And they celebrate the life in the womb always. And they love the moms through those difficult days, no matter what.
It's up to us to be instruments of restoration,
right?
Yeah. One thing that he says here that's really great in the book. He says, God is not only the judge of sin, but he is also the savior of sinners. He's the judge who loathes abortion and the king who loves even those who participate in it. So hear this good news. God forgives entirely, he heals deeply, and he restores completely. Mm-hmm. And that's so good. And we have to remember that on this earth, the church is to be the hands and feet of Jesus. We are to be the instruments by which he heals, forgives, and restores.
And to people in our congregation, a word to them is, if there's ever a situation where somebody is contemplating abortion, come and speak to us, or speak to women in our congregation, contact our women's ministry. We want to, as a church, be there, care, and help. Mm-hmm. And we don't want people to be silent in something they're suffering with. We're here to carry burdens together. Mm-hmm. And we would do whatever it takes to help those hurting in our congregation.
And the carrying of burdens doesn't stop with us just saying, well, you really shouldn't do that.
That's right.
Yeah. That is the beginning of a conversation of restoration and healing, and us caring for each other.
Mm-hmm. That's right. There's a lot of ways that the restoration works practically for the church, and one of those is baby shower, but there's a bunch of other ones, right? I mean, there's so many that I could think of and just point to that I think would be a part of that. There's also the care for children, in terms of the Alabama Baptist Children's Home. We're going to move toward, in this latter chapter after this, we look to orphans and so forth, and so we're gonna be pro those things alongside, because that's the whole picture of restoration. We're for the child and the mom and the father, and even amidst all of that picture, we want to be about restoring and bringing healing, and because that's what Christ would have us to do, and I think we have to, our culture, we communicate to our culture. We do believe things that Scripture says are true, and that we believe Scripture is true in everything it says. And we believe premarital sex is wrong, but at the same time we believe that. We also believe that orphans and moms that walk through those difficult moments, we encourage them, we love them, we help them, and want to be a means of healing, in their life and encouragement to them. Mm-hmm. I'm reminded of, in ministry, I've had a student come in ministry come to me and say, hey, look, I made a mistake, and I'm gonna have a child, and I didn't get out my Bible and read all the verses on how that's wrong. In that moment, that young lady needed healing, and she needed comfort, and she needed a hug, and she needed prayer, and she needed a church to reach out to her and minister to her, and that's what we did. And and that's what I think would be a good thing for people to hear that maybe don't have a church, is to say, hey, look, the church believes things that are true, but we believe all of them, and we believe in justice, compassion, grace, mercy. We believe all this picture, and we believe that God has made us a people to help and be an encouragement and a blessing, and I hope people see that in action. I hope people really see that.
And I think they do through our church and through many churches in our community. I mean, I think that we are so blessed to be in a position where we can meet with people and meet people's needs and truly be the hands and feet of Jesus. And blessed to serve in a church that views those things as important. Truly. But, well, thank you for joining us today. Like John said, actually stick around for right through this part. We're going to have an interview with Amy Webb from Sav-A-Life here in town. She's also a church member. And just talk to her a little bit about maybe some more practical ways that we might be able to help people in crisis in our community. In crises is correct. But thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions about anything we talked about, if you want clarification on anything, we'd love to talk to you. Give us a call, send us an email. If you have questions for next week, don't miss out, because we'll be talking about orphans and widows, right? Yeah, the gospel and orphans and widows. But we love you. Know that we love you so very much, and we're thankful to serve you, and we're really looking forward to continuing our study together. So thanks for joining us. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for this kind of post-discussion interview. I'm here with Amy Webb, a church member and a dear friend, and she works with Sav-A-Life here in Tuscaloosa. So Amy, just tell us a little bit about what it is that you guys do.
Well, Sav-A-Life is a nonprofit organization. What we do mainly is free pregnancy tests and ultrasounds for unplanned pregnancies, for moms who come in and just need help. They can come in, they can get a pregnancy test. We offer counseling, and we give them all sorts of different options. The name of our center here in Tuscaloosa is called Choices Pregnancy Clinic, and one of the purposes for that is that we give them choices. There's not just one option. If you have an unplanned pregnancy, a lot of people think, well, you just have to have an abortion, and that's just definitely not the case. You have adoption, you of course have parenting, and we want them to know the truth about abortion. If they go to the abortion clinic, which is next door, they don't always give them the true facts of, hey, there's a real baby in there. And we want them to know those true facts before they make any life-changing decisions. We also counsel them even up to when their child is 2 years old. We don't stop right when, hey, you're pregnant, you need to go to the doctor, and then that's it. We counsel them, we give them classes, we can give them different recommendations on housing, on where they can get food, where they can get clothes, and we offer that as well. We have a boutique there, and the parents can take our classes, earn points, and come shop and buy things. They can come get diapers, wipes, anything that they really need for that baby, they can get through us. And we want them to know that we love them and care for them, and they hear about Jesus while they're there, which is, of course, the number one thing that they should be hearing. And so we just want them to know that we love them, we care for them, and there are other options other than aborting their baby.
Wow, man, there's so much to unpack there. That's
Right,
so
a lot.
so great. I mean, you guys are basically just this one-stop shop
Yeah.
for everything. I mean, location. That's massive. You guys are right next door, like you said, to the
Right.
abortion clinic in town.
Yes.
How does that kind of affect how you're able to meet people where they are, I guess?
Well, another reason why we like the name Choices is because people sometimes will come to the abortion clinic and there'll be a walk-in, and they may accidentally walk into the wrong place. They may walk into our center instead of theirs. And in doing that, we get to love on them a little bit, and hopefully we can change their mind before they go to that abortion clinic. And then we have had people that have gone to the abortion clinic, have had an appointment, they go in there, and of course they have to have an ultrasound before they can do an abortion to make sure that the fetus is actually viable. And there have been women who have gone in there and seen that baby in there and immediately run out and come straight next door to us. And that's what we love. That's what we want them to do, is just come to us and let us help them through this situation that is, of course, devastating in their life and hard to understand how you're ever going to make it through. And that's what we want to do. We want to help them and try to guide them to know that there is options. There's choices. You have options other than aborting that baby. And so...
And I think, we keep using the word choice, and choice is obviously the name of the clinic, and that's, the word choice, especially with regards to this topic, has become so co-opted, right, by people who are pro-abortion in many cases.
Right.
But the fact that we can frame it in such a way as to say, hey, you really do have a choice. Here are these multitudes of options for the life of the child to be
Exactly.
saved. That is just so cool, so cool. One of the things that I think has caught my attention is when you were talking about you provide counseling services up until the child is 2 years old. Like, that's massive.
Yeah.
I mean, so often, and I think one of the most legitimate, albeit unfortunate, arguments against, sometimes people will argue against these Christian clinics for like, well, they're pro-choice or pro-life until the baby's born, and then they're just kind of whatever. But how does that affect how many families do you see come back, or women that you see come back for those kind of services?
Well, we had actually a lady today that came in, and she has just recently had a new baby, but she also has a 4-year-old, and she was with us when she had her 4-year-old. And so she came back to us, and really she was still there because the classes we offer, of course now with the virus, we have to do those online, but they're able to take so many classes, and it goes from, a brand new mom who knows nothing, those type of classes, up to toddler, up to adolescence, and how to teach your child courage and how to teach your child this. And then there's classes for just women and how to be a single mom, or there's classes for men as well. We have classes for dads to try to help them to learn and to be that kind of godly father that the Lord wants us to be. So we don't stop just when that baby's born. She came in today just to get diapers, and of course she ran over to the other side so we could see that sweet baby, and we love on her, and she's just a blessing. We love to be able to see those babies when they come back, and the 4-year-old, and that's just one thing that we love to do, is to just be able to watch them grow up.
Man, that's so great. That's so great. And so many, continuous gospel opportunities too.
Exactly, yes.
You're not just pouring into someone in the moment, which is so important, but being able to come back and see them come back and continuously pour into their lives. That's so cool. Well, you talked about briefly just how you have classes for men. A lot of times I think we think of this particular issue, the issue of abortion, being a women's issue.
Right.
And there are a lot of situations that that perspective is absolutely important. But how could men be involved in a way that might be helpful with this particular clinic?
Well, we have someone on staff. His name is Chris, and he's on staff as our kind of a dad's liaison, I guess. And he's there once a week. And when dads come in, we really just want to talk to them and let them know, hey, you're going to be a very important part of this baby's life. Dads are very important. And then he also does what he calls Dad's Night Out. Once a month, he invites all the dads that we have to come. We usually get wings or burgers or whatever, and they just talk. And one thing that he has said that would be very helpful is if we could have some good Christian men or good Christian dads to come on those nights and help him and, just kind of teach those guys, because a lot of these guys didn't have a father in their life, and so they don't know what it means to be a good dad or a godly father. And so one thing is just men that can come and show those dads what it means to be a good Christian, godly father. And I know a lot of people think, like you said, it's really just for moms. But it's not. We have plenty of classes for dads. We have things for dads to do. We have Chris who can talk to dads and help them through anything they have. And we have dads that come in and be like, well, it's not my decision what she does with the baby. But it is. If it's your baby, it's your decision as well. So we just, that's one thing we would love to have, just some men that could come and help on those nights that he has those dads night out, or even volunteer on Tuesdays when he's there and meet some of those guys and just talk to them.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds great, and like a great opportunity for a lot of our guys to be able to get involved. So as far as tangible ways, things that we could help, things that we could maybe bring, or ways that members of the body at Skyland can help, what are some ways that we could help to support you guys in what you do?
Of course, we always need money. Any donation, of course, is always welcome. And what our women did, our women's team did a baby shower for Sav-A-Life, and we brought some things, that diapers, wipes, clothes, that kind of thing that was kind of on our wish list. We do have a wish list on Amazon. You can look up Sav-A-Life Tuscaloosa on Amazon. We have a wish list. You're welcome to buy and donate any of those items. And time. Any volunteers. We have a volunteer coordinator who we can speak to and work out time. We need people who can write thank you notes, or who can help organize the boutique, or can just clean, or can do, any of those things. Anybody that just has some spare time. We love to have volunteers, and they can help us out so much, so that we can mentor to these women and all the little things we can have somebody else do. But there's always things and time that's mainly what we need.
Gotcha. Okay. Would you guys have a website?
We do. Sav-A-Life-Tuscaloosa.com is our website. There's also a Choices website. It is more just for the clients mainly, but Sav-A-Life Tuscaloosa is ours. We are also on Facebook, on Instagram, and then, like I said, you can go to Amazon, look up our wish list, and if you use Amazon Smile, you can choose Sav-A-Life as your to where you're going to donate your money. So that would be great too.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, we will absolutely link all of those things up with this.
Awesome.
And so if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook or anything like that, just check out the descriptions, and we'll have all of those links in there. But Amy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Josh.
We really appreciate it, and know that we'll continue to keep you guys in our prayers.
Great. Thank you.